If your contribution to ending racism is just not being racist, then you are doing enough. I saw recently that people who aren't racist aren't doing enough to end racism and that they need to actively combat racism wherever they see it. Sure, that would be great, but a person who does not combat racism and just does not contribute is doing his part. He is not contributing to the problem like seems to be a consensus. He's not going above and beyond to stop it either though. If everyone does just their part of not being racist, racism would be over instantaneously, so it is wrong to put the obligation to end racism on the people who are already against it. Sure, non-participants aren't doing anything heroic or fighting for anything, but getting mad at them accomplishes nothing. Attack the problem. It's like littering. Is someone not doing enough to stop littering if they aren't picking up trash every weekend? Is just not littering enough to not be considered a bad person? In my opinion, yes. Yes, it is. The problem is that not being racist is different all over. A whole heap of people will say they aren't racist when someone living 1,000 miles away sees them as super racist. It's one thing to not litter. It's another thing to regularly spend time with someone who is constantly littering and say or do nothing to address it. Not being racist while surrounding yourself with racists doesn't mean you're ending racism by not joining in. It just means that you're a passive person who is simply not getting involved. It's neither moral nor immoral, it's amoral. It's also cowardly and unprincipled. If someone is opposed to racism and dedicated towards the cause of the eradication of racism, then they're morally obligated to intervene in perceived instances of racism. Granted, I think the cause of eradicating racism is entirely futile. Ignorance, hatred, tribalism, and cruelty are aspects of the human condition and can't be removed. One might as well try to end rudeness. That's not to say that we have to be accepting or tolerant of it. Yeah, as long as you aren't actually racist, you are not spreading racism. However, I do think that morally, if you see someone being racist, you should intervene. Controversial take, but you're never going to change how people think. You can protest and riot and all that, but it's just never going to happen. You can tell young kids that racism is bad and ideally they will grow up with that idea. You can hire cops who have no record of racism and that's going to help. But grown-ass adult men? You're almost never going to change their mind. Racism will always be a thing. You can't just end it. I'm not trying to defend anyone with this statement. I'm simply saying that there's not much you can do to end it. BRB guys, I'm suiting up to go fight the KKK. Internet activists aren't doing any more to stop racism by getting outraged in comment sections than I'm doing by minding my own business, not being racist and being a good person in the real world. I'm a white guy married to a black girl, yet because we're both Trump supporters we're racists. Wrap your noggin around that one, Reddit. If you didn't vote for multiculturalism you owe nobody anything, and I am against racism. I don't think so. With some things inaction can be nearly as bad. For example, the time period is the late 18th century, and if your only contribution to ending slavery is not owning slaves, then you are doing enough. Yes, and teach your kids to do the same. Done. I think it's kind of delusional to think racism will ever be ended. People fucking hate each other all over the world for no reason. That's why I think it's more important to focus on what you can do. Sure, maybe for some people that means protesting or lobbying, but I think for the majority of people it's just leading by example with kindness. I had a conversation about the racial issues of the modern world not too long ago, and it's some down time that there is issues, but maybe everyone is going about it the wrong way. I feel there is more hate on both sides rather than trying for peace. Looking back on Milk and the civil rights movement, there was an idea of non-violence, there was an idea of peace and just wanting to be accepted. Milk didn't even wish violence on the people who tried to hurt him or his family. When I look at the world today though, I feel that some of the issues of the world may be blown out of proportion. The media does like to cause chaos. Chaos and drama sell well and it gets views. Yes, there are actual problems, there is racism, but I feel that if people took and embraced the values that Milk had, then we would see less hate amongst the different races. You can't fight hate with hate and expect everything to work out. There will only be more hate. Yes, there is ignorance and some people are just hateful, but don't stoop to their level to fight them. I'm an individualist, so I don't give a single fucking shit about the culture wars or tribalism. Don't lump me in with people that are perpetuating racism just because I don't buy into the collectivist group thought of those who fight against racism. How exactly do you actively combat racism though? I mean, exactly. Racism is a thing, and it's bad, MK, and can be avoided, but anti-racism isn't a thing, and can't thus be avoided, alright. And it's not like littering at all, as one can concretely work against that problem, by picking up litter. How exactly do you literally expunge racist actions that have already happened? Moreover, your analogy there also works against you, in that easily the most efficient, feasible, and common efforts about combating littering are the proactive, preventative measures. Are you maybe advising people to become Catholic and go to confession? Somehow I doubt it. This is Reddit LOL. Just don't be a dick or an annoying SJW. I can see your point. If we did this with everything, then we wouldn't have time to do any normal life things like work because we would be trying to prove our stand against everything wrong. Even then, not everyone has the time to get caught up in a bunch of race shit. If I hear one more person ramble about blacks and whites, I'm gonna stab somebody. Especially since half of the self-righteous assholes who talk about it use it as a platform to talk down and condemn white people while ironically leaving behind in an instant the very first point they wanted to make. That racism isn't good. They're walking contradictions. The most ironic thing about this is that it shows how flawed humanity is, not blacks or whites, Asians or Hispanics or Arabs, but humanity. The same people who lectured us today about race sound exactly like the people who talked about race back in the 50s or even further back. They're short-sighted, have a terrible grasp on reality, and follow their political organizations to an almost dogmatic level. Same story, just different names. And the more they fail to realize that, the bigger of a hole they'll dig. But they won't realize that until it's too late. We never do.